In a world where humans are at the bottom of the food chain, a single mother must navigate the dangerous waters of raising werewolf pups. Chapter 1. In other news, the vampire's representative in Maine has expressed his disappointment in the acknowledgement that the Pure Human Association has been getting from local government officials. And even though the leader of the vampires in the Americas, the elusive Lord Arthur, couldn't be reached for a comment, as usual, it's clear that the position of the vampires regarding the association remains antagonistic. Lydian's attention to the news report was interrupted by a customer's loud call. "Coming, Ted. Stop yelling." Ted was one of the diner's regular customer. She'd been coming in every day at the same time ever since her first week at work 2.5 years ago. Waitering tables was far from Lydian's dream job, but sometimes life just doesn't give a shit about your plans. "Thanks, baby doll." Ted winked, his twinkling blue eyes creasing at the corners. Along with his mass of curly blonde hair and deep golden skin, he could have been at home in a Florida beach, except that where they were a little town south of Portland. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Logan, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Was quite a distance from the blazing sun and glorious coasts of Florida. "I didn't know you were that interested in vampires," he added in reference to the news report she had been focused on, putting his usual plate of double cheeseburger with extra pickles and fries on the table. She shrugged. Not really. She lied. For years ago, she wouldn't have given a second glance to the news about any of the immortals in the States. However, her situation was vastly different now, although it was really the vampires who were of real importance to her. I'm surprised those humans have the guts to announce their hatred so openly. "Yeah. Well, as long as they don't stir trouble in our state, they can do whatever the hell they want." Ted shuddered, visibly. "But you're right. I wouldn't be able to do it. Vampires are way too creepy." "You've met one before?" Lillian asked, her eyes widening in curiosity. Vampires kept mostly to big cities for some reason, though she had never seen one. There could be vampires in Portland, but she never stumbled upon them. She would know if she did. Unlike most humans who couldn't differentiate humans from immortals, she did so quite easily. "Yep," he said, picking at his fries. "I went to a club in Portland once, the other Portland on the other side of the country, and there was a vampire feeding off some chick in a corner. It was in plain sight, and I could tell the girl was enjoying it. What's really creepy was the look in the guy's eyes. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Logan, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." He looked at her like she was food. But then again, I guess that's what we are to them. Thank God there are no vampires here. Lydian agreed with a slow nod. "We have our own monsters," she whispered, but not low enough because Ted chuckled. "Yep, we do. But hey, at least they keep to their territory. You only see them here once in a long while, when they don't find what they need in the towns closer to their forests. And unlike vampires, they don't mingle with humans much." Lydian had something to say to that, but she chose to keep her silence. So Ted said, leaning forward with a slow smile that had undoubtedly broken many hearts before, "Am I gonna have that date yet?" Lillian grinned at him. "You know my answer to that." "Ted," she said for the 100th time. He was probably teasing her, Lillian thought, though her co-workers thought he was serious. But she had other priorities, and she was okay with that. A man was the last thing she needed in her life at the moment. "Yeah, that you're not ready for a relationship," Ted said, grinning back. "You just wait. Lillian, one of those days you'll go to that date with me." Lillian shook her head at him as she turned back to her work. "You just wait. Doll," Ted called after her loud enough for all the customers to hear. "Eat your lunch, Ted," Lillian called back, waving her hand over her shoulder. It was a slow day, so Brianna, the manager, made her leave early. Brianna knew about Lillian's situation, or at least part of it, so she made sure to send her home early whenever they could afford to, oftentimes along with enough food for 3. Looking skyward as she walked down the street, she could see the clouds gathering in intensity. Hopefully the rain would hold off until she reached Lydia's. Lillian hated driving in the rain. The car ride was a quick 10-minute journey. It would have taken more with the bus if Lydia didn't insist on frequently lending Lillian her car. She owed Mrs. Lydia Harrison more than she could ever repay. The old lady had been the closest thing to a mother Lillian had had in the last 5 years. Lillian was grateful to have someone shouldering such a big secret. Sometimes she thought she would given up a long time ago, had Lydia not been in her life. No, Lillian thought with furious determination. She would never give up even if the whole world turned against her. She would protect them to her very last breath. They may be monsters to the world, but they're her little monsters. In back. Lillian, close the door. Quick. Lillian did as told, dropping her bag to the floor and running to the living room. Lydia stood in the middle of the cozy room, her hands on her hips and a stern expression on her kind face. Lillian knew the expression wouldn't last very long. It never did. Soon a smile would start playing at her lips. The living room was a mess. The sofa's soft brown pillows were scattered all over the floor. A decorative piece lay shattered from where it fell from the small round table near the locked French doors leading to the backyard. She always knew that beautiful vase would break sooner or later. That was why she had begged Lydia not to leave it there. At the time, the old lady just waved her off. Her steely grey eyes that had seen so much life kind and smiling in her lined face. Right now, her narrowed gaze was directed at the top of the mantel, where an oversized blonde puppy wagged his tail, baring his teeth in a mischievous wolfish grin that spelled trouble. "Come down here, young man," Lydia said in her best chiding tone. Inching closer to the fireplace, Lillian snapped her gaze from the scene where a high-pitched bark filled the room. She felt the familiar pressure of soft, fuzzy fur on her legs. "Hey, sweetheart," Lillian said, picking up the puppy, looking up at her with big amber eyes. The puppy gave her face an eager lick. "Your brother has been naughty again." "How the puppy up, Ed," Lillian put him down after kissing between ears that seemed too big for his head. She took a deep breath. Then, mimicking Lydia's pose, hands on hips and face stern, she used what the old lady jokingly called her alpha voice. The little beast always did as told when she spoke to them in such a tone. Surprisingly, Lydia cowled and do it no matter how much she tried. Much to the old lady's chagrin. "Elijah Jackson Miller, come down this instant." The puppy whimpered. The sound always managed to chip at Lillian's stern mask. Elijah jumped to the ground. He rubbed his length against Lydia's leg, wagging his tail, before trotting to sit beside his brother at Lillian's feet. "Go put on clothes, then come back here," Lillian said, crouching to pet the twins. "You're going to take care of your mess." The little rascals trotted down the hallway to their room, bumping each other along the way. Elijah nipped at his brother's neck. Ezra swiped his paw at Elijah's face. Lillian warned. They gave her an innocent look over their shoulder before racing to their room. Lillian shook her head with a fond smile. Lydia shoved back the grey hair she always wore in a long pixie cut. Coming to hug Lillian, Lydia patted her back. Lydia chuckled, the sound familiar and soothing. Lillian's muscles relaxed, and she sank in the old woman's embrace. "How was your day, sweetheart?" "Good," Lillian said, pulling back. "It was kind of a slow day, so my feet don't feel like they're about to fall off." Kicking a pillow out of the way, Lillian sat down on the couch, massaging her aching calves. "Well, that's good to hear." Lydia joined her, sitting down with a sigh. She looked around the messy living room, then gave a delighted laugh. "Oh, I do love those two little devils." Lillian snorted. "They know you'd let them off the hook for practically anything, and they take advantage of it." Lydia waved her off. "I have the right to spoil them. I'm their granny." Lillian's throat closed up. They didn't share blood, but it didn't matter. Lydia was family. She had been family ever since that fateful night 5 years ago when they literally ran into each other. Lillian heavy, wet and cold, had found so much warmth and love in the old lady. It seemed as though her whole life's sufferingness had been balanced out by meeting Lydia. Lydia had been living on her own after her husband's death 5 years ago. She was still mourning when they first met. Her grief a constant watery film over eyes of silver. But as she took Lydia into her home, as she took care of her and then of her two little beasts, she gradually became a joyful old woman whose love of life burned brightly once more. Fostering a small family of 3 had a positive effect on her. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Lydia braced herself as Elijah came running down the hallway. In his skin once more and with clothes on, he threw himself on her, knocking her breath out. And, following more calmly, was Ezra. He sat down between Lillian and Lydia. Lillian smothered Elijah's soft cheeks with loud, sloppy kisses, inhaling his familiar scent. Elijah giggled and the whole day's exhaustion vanished. How she loved holding her babies in her arms. It was a joy she would challenge the world to protect. Elijah soon got himself on his granny's lap and Lillian turned to the more sensible of the twins. They looked so identical in appearance. Even Lydia would confuse them at times, but their personalities couldn't be more different. "Hey, B," Lillian whispered, gathering Ezra in her arms. He squeezed his arms around her neck and murmured a greeting. She kissed his head and smoothed her hands over his light brown hair and down his back. She loved drowning her children in affection. She adored them and would never let that fact. It didn't matter if they turned into wolves. They were and always would be the babies she held in her insides for 9 months. Her babies. They both looked like carbon copies of her, with bright blue eyes and brown hair. Their skin a creamy shade that resisted the sun. No one who saw them would ever mistake them for something other than mother and sons. Sometimes, she wondered if she'd have loved them as much had they looked anything like their father, even though she barely remembered the man. But she'd quickly dismissed the ridiculous thought. She'd love them no matter their appearance, no matter their race. "All right, boys," Lillian said. "Tidy up." "No, Elijah whined from where he lay horizontally around Lydia's shoulders. "Oh no, young man." Lillian tapped his nose. "What did I tell you guys about shifting, huh? No shifting allowed when you're not around," they said in unison, making Lydia's lips twitch up in a smile. They often did that. Speak the same thing simultaneously or look at each other like they're having a conversation inside their heads. Lydia found it endearing. Lillian too. "That's right. So why did you shift?" "They wanted to play," Ezra said, his gaze all kinds of sorry. How could she resist those eyes? Lillian sighed and pushed his hair back with gentle fingers. "I know, sweetheart, but you have to control them." "Tay," they murmured. The blue in their eyes melted into a vibrant amber for a second. Lydia and Lillian shared a heavy look. It was a conversation they'd had a dozen times before. After Lillian cleaned the shards of glass off the floor, she left the boys to arrange the living room, then joined Lydia in the kitchen. Lydia was stirring a pot when Lillian leaned on the counter beside her. The kitchen was small but very well furnished, much like the one-story house they lived in. It was Lydia's house, since Lillian couldn't bring herself to leave Lydia alone, and Lydia wouldn't take any rent from Lillian. They came to the agreement, after a lot of convincing and guilt-tripping from Lillian's part, that Lillian would take care of the groceries and a share of the bills. "The boys are growing quite fast," Lydia said. Her eyes strained to the door of the kitchen. The notes of the twins' laughter flowed in. Lydia unwrapped her arms around her middle, the knot of dread in her stomach growing bigger each day. "If their wolves get bigger than they are right now, I don't know if I'd be able to manage them. This is frustrating." Lillian was lost. She didn't know what to do. Sharpshooters, particularly wolves, are one of the most secretive race in the world. They don't mingle much with humans. Their territories are all vast stretches of forest all around the country, and are off limits to humans, although the shifters themselves can venture into human cities and towns anytime they like. One of the advantages of being the predator and not a prey, Lillian guessed. Humans were in the bottom of the food chain, because of the wolves' tendency to guard their privacy with sharp claws. Lillian had little to no information about them, and that was a major problem since she had 2 wolf pups that were growing bigger and stronger by the day. Her children would soon reach an age when she could no longer keep them at her side all the time. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Her guilt about how they lived was a constant weight on her heart. She couldn't take her kids to the park to play with others their age. She couldn't take their wolves for a run for her. Their wolves were an inseparable part of her babies. The wolves were her babies, and she couldn't give them the simple joy of stretching their legs in a run, the delight of playing under the sun until they tire. Lydia's backyard opened to the back of a park. That was the only place they let loose, and it was always at night under her watchful gaze. The fig trees provided enough cover for them, but it wouldn't last long as their wolves grew. They wouldn't be able to go to school, meet other kids, travel and fall in love. The future was clouded by a thick fog because she didn't know how her children would grow up having to hide amongst humans. And she was too selfish to give her kids up, to be raised by other wolves, by people just like them. She knew well how it felt to wonder why your parents abandoned you. She couldn't give her babies away. She was ready to live among the wolves with them, but the wolves wouldn't welcome a human into their territory. Deep down, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Lydia knew what she would eventually do. It would break her heart. But if it was the only choice, she would make sure her boys got to live as wolves. As they should. Even if it meant being apart from them. She knew without a doubt the wolves would take them in if they knew about their existence. It was one of the few things that werewolves were proud to share with the world. Wolves weren't pack creatures. They looked after their own. Her heart ached so much it felt as though it would implode at the thought of not seeing her babies again. Not now, Lillian thought, rubbing the hurt in her chest. There was still time. It will work out. Bunny, Lydia said, her eyes perceptive of the pain Lillian fostered in her heart. It'll work out. I sure hope so, Lillian said, then took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders and began setting the table. It would do no good to drown in a pool of heartbreak when nothing was decided yet. Who knew? Maybe it would truly work out. Somehow, the kitchen soon filled with the delicious aroma of herbs, veggies, beef and tomato sauce that accompanied Lydia's best dish, spaghetti bolognese. The kids settled in around the island in their usual seats. We helped Granny make her hoot ship, Elijah said, already on his second serving of spaghetti. Their appetite was growing scarily stronger. Oh, did you? Lillian helped Ezra to another serving. It wasn't difficult at all, Ezra said. I want to make ships when I grow up too. Lillian grinned as her boys fell into a recollection of their time with Lydia. Lydia made miniature ships, sold some of them, although it wasn't her main job. Lydia Harrison was retired. Lillian didn't know. Lydia always avoided answering any questions regarding her previous occupation. Lillian had a strong feeling it was nothing as mundane as a teacher or a doctor, and the different guns Lydia cleaned on a regular basis in her room had a lot to do with it. Lillian loved watching Lydia clean all her weapons. She'd do it once a week when the kids were long asleep, and Lillian would watch. The routine calmed her, as weird as that sounded, but that was the extent of Lillian's interest in weapons, watching them from a safe distance. Despite Lee and Ness reservations, Lydia had insisted on training her and gifted her a small gun that could be tucked discreetly inside her small purse. Listening to her sons discuss the future in a cheerful tone, occasionally asking for their mom or granny's opinions, Lillian cherished the simple and peaceful moment and wished there was many more to come. But life had other ideas. Rain fell hard and fast that night, and it didn't cease for the next few days. Lillian drove so slowly to the way home from work that as she walked she would reach the house faster. She hated driving in the rain. Damn rain, she muttered, parking in the driveway. With the heavy downpour, she hadn't noticed, but now that she looked closely, she could see no lights on in the house. The door was wide open, letting in the wind and rain of the stormy night. The lampposts next to the house were dark. Lightning flashed, giving the house a haunted look. Lillian braved the rain right as thunder crashed, making her jump. Confusion first, then a sense of foreboding washed over her as she approached the door. It hung broken out of its hinges. She sneaked in, on instinct. Her hand went into her purse, clutching the small gun Lydia had gifted her. Lydia, who laid sprawled on the dark living room's floor, only visible because of a momentary flash of lightning. Oh God! Oh God! Lillian rushed to kneel beside the old woman who had been a mother to her in the last 5 years. Lydia's chest was a bloody mess, her light nicked dark. In her right hand was one of the guns she kept on her all times. Lillian dropped her gun, her hands hovering in panic, wanting to help but not knowing how to, fearing she'd make it worse than it already was. Her children. Lillian looked around. They were nowhere to be seen. Help. She had to call help. She reached for her purse, only for cold hands to grip her fingers. Lillian stared at Lydia's eyes. Lillian. Lydia's voice was a wet gurgle, a dark liquid leaking out of her mouth. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. They came for the kids. Lillian was disoriented for a moment as Lydia's words caught up with her. Oh God. Police. Ambulance. I should call now, Lydia said firmly, clutching Lillian's hand tightly. I won't make it. Go after the kids. And don't call the police. The attackers were human. They want the boys. Because they're wolves. Lillian shook her head, her breath coming out in short, shallow gasps. She wanted to go after her kids. She wanted to stay with Lydia. But as her eyes wandered to Lydia's torso when a flash of lightning hit again, she could make out at least 6 gunshots scattered all over her chest and abdomen. Lydia's faint voice interrupted the haze of shock. The boys ran to the park go. Lydia's voice faded, drowned by thunder. Her body went limp and her steely eyes lost all the light. No, no, no. No, Lydia muttered furiously. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911. There was no signal. Dropping her phone, Lydia tried to perform CPR. In vain. Tears blurred her vision and streaked down her face as she finally admitted the old woman was gone. I'm so sorry. Maybe later. The guilt of Lydia's death would bring her down to her knees. But not now. After taking a second to lower Lydia's eyelids, Lillian scrambled up to her feet, gun clutched tightly in her hand. Looking around, she belatedly noticed the French doors to the back garden were broken open too. A wave of fury washed over her, gritting her teeth against the fear that wanted to paralyze her. She embraced the fury, welcomed it, going through the backyard towards another and door that led straight to the vast garden of the park behind their house. It was almost impossible to see except for those mere moments when the sky light and be thunder boomed. She focused on any sound, anything that could lead her to her boys, hoping she'd be able to hear it over the noise of pouring rain on the canopy of trees. It was 5 minutes later that she heard it. But it was Elijah or Ezra's voice. Lillian froze. Damn it. How hard can it be to track to little brats? An annoyed alt-male voice. There was a scuffing of boots before a reply came. I told you we should have brought more men. A colorful curse. Then, that damn old lady got me good. Lillian smothered the urge to go out there and shoot the bastards. Keeping her cool head, she took a deep breath and followed after the men as they moved forward in slow steps. Now that she was closer, she could see the glow of a couple of torchlights. It was enough in the dark, rainy night. Lillian watched her feet closely, not wanting her steps to give her away. She had been in this park hundreds of times with the twins, always at night, so she knew her way better than currently hunting her babies. She hoped her baby's familiarity with the park would save them from being taken. It was a whisper of a voice, so low she could have sworn it was inside her head. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Lydian stopped, waiting for the men ahead of her to do the same. But they didn't. Lydian looked around, wanting to call back but afraid. "Mummy, we're here." Again, the same voice. It was Ezra's voice. And this time, Lydian was certain it was inside her head. Was she going crazy? "Molly, Lydian looked up, and there were they. Two wolf pups that were too big to be normal, perched on a thick branch. They were pressed to the tree trunk, cloaked by the shadows. If she hadn't known they were there, she wouldn't have seen them. "Mommy," Elijah's voice this time. "She told us to go to the park and hide until you got here, acting purely on an instinct." Lydian replied inside her head, purposefully avoiding any mention of Lydia. "Yes, sweetheart. You did good. Are you hurt? Can you climb down?" The two men's steps could no longer be heard. Hopefully, they were far enough. "Yes." "Are the bad men gone?" "They're a little far away," Lydian replied, scanning the tree. "I want you to climb down one at a time. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. And be as sneaky as you can, baby. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." She should probably freak out about having communicated telepathically with her children, but not now. Keeping her gun in one hand, she focused on helping them down when they were within reach with the other hand. She had just gotten Elijah's werewolf on the ground next to Ezra when they both growled. Fangs bared and hackles raised, their eyes fixed on something behind her. She whipped around, raising her gun and clicking off the safety. A good distance away from her stood a big hunk of a man, his black platform barely visible in the darkness. The only thing she could make out was the glint in his eyes. Lydia's hands shook. She took a deep breath and shoved her fear down, locking it away. Her vision cleared and her hands steadied. The man had his own gun pointed at her. She hadn't heard him approach. Was he one of the two men she had been tailing? Probably not. This one gave a whole different vibe, a more dangerous vibe. How stupid of her to assume there would only be two men. Much to her horror, Elijah and Ezra came to stand between her and the armed man. His steps faltered. He raised his gun and Lydian realized he didn't want to accidentally shoot the boys. They wanted them alive. That thought made her knees tremble because there was not much they could do to harm dead wolves. Living ones, on the other hand. So she took advantage of the man's hesitation, and she shot 3 consecutive ones. She didn't aim, but by the grunt of pain coming from the man, she figured at least one of her bullets did some damage. The man shot. The bullet whooshed past her head. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "Run to the house." The boys instantly obeyed like they did whenever she used that tone of voice. It apparently worked even with their little mind-speaking trick. The pups bolted to the house. She ran after them. They were so fast, she was barely keeping up. As expected, the 2 other men had heard the shots, so it was no wonder their elephant, like footfalls, pounded behind her. They were far. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." Lydian reached the house and remembered Lydia's body in the living room. She didn't want the kids to see that. Didn't want their memory of the old woman stained by blood. Go around the house to the front yard. Wait for me by the car. The kids did as ordered while she went into the house. Guilt and sadness pinching her guts, she picked up her purse with the car keys and shot straight through the front door. In a flash, the 3 of them were inside the vehicle. The pups touched down on the car floor of the passenger seat beside her. As she pulled out of the driveway in a dangerous speed, all her inhibitions about driving in the rain buried under the rush of adrenaline, she could see the 2 men in the rear, joined by a 3rd one holding his limpon. They followed in a run. shooting in the process. But they were too late. She was already barreling down the street, speeding through the streets. Her thoughts as wild as her heart beat. Lillian considered her options. She didn't have many. Should she call the police? And tell them what? That her two children who could turn into wolves were chased by humans. She didn't know how that would end up for her boys. Humans would relish any sort of advantage they could get over a mortal. And if it meant keeping two wolf pups under lock and key to experiment on, they wouldn't hesitate to jump on the chance. No, she couldn't go to the authorities with this. She didn't trust her own race with her children. Only one choice seemed like the logical thing to do. The interspecies precarious at best. Lydia had told her once while meticulously cleaning one of her guns after breaking it down to little pieces. Lillian had watched the old lady work, her motions so familiar they brought her comfort. Especially with humans. Humans, by nature, are arrogant. It doesn't matter how many times they're proved weak and helpless when faced with immortals throughout the history of the world. They will still make the mistake of believing themselves superior to other races. It's funny, really. Lydia sipped her warm tea. Were you alive during the 50s war? Lydia laughed aloud, then covered her mouth. Oops. The kids are sleeping. Her eyes wide and looking towards the kids' room as if expecting them to run out any moment. She looked back at Lillian, a grin on her lips. Oh, my sweets. If you wanted to know my age, all you had to do is ask. Lillian chuckled, throwing a pillow towards the young, spirited old lady. She deflected it with an ease that spoke of a former profession Lillian could only guess. Let's just say I was at least involved in cleaning up some of the mess of that war. Her eyes turned solemn. You'll never forget some of the things I saw back then. But because I've seen those things, I can't help but be awed by some of the humans nowadays. It's like they forget that almost 15% of the human population on Earth had been wiped out because they weren't prey anymore. While the truth is, humans are prey. It's a simple fact. It's not something our race can grow out of. It's not something any amount of armed power can change. But still, they waste an immense amount of money on research and weapon industries that it's laughable. Lillian frowned. Don't you think it'll amount to anything? Even the research. My dear, it doesn't matter what the humans can come up with. Do you know why we are prey? Lillian. Lydia looked out through the French doors to the dark outside, as if seeing a far-away world. It's not because we're weaker or slower or smaller, although those reasons play a role. Then why? Silvery eyes met Lillian's bright blue ones. It's because we can't use magic. Humans can't access the magic layer. They just aren't physically equipped to do that. And it doesn't matter what weapons or inventions humans come up with. Magic always wins. That's why I want you to be careful. Lillian, humans will do anything to have an advantage over other immortals. Even imprisoned little wolves. They wouldn't see anything wrong with dissecting them and putting them back together time and time again in order to study them. Figure out their weaknesses and strengths. Don't trust other humans, my dear. And if anything happens, know that no matter what the wolves do or don't, they take care of their own. They take care of their own. Lillian's thoughts echoed Lydia's words as she took a sharp turn, heading out of the city. With the weather so volatile, fewer people were around. She didn't know whether that was good or bad for her. She knew the way to wolf territory. She had studied it over and over again in a map she kept hidden in her night table. The wolves in Oregon inhabited the forested areas, which covered most of the state. The woods were their domain. Humans only had dominion over a few cities. A few towns and roads linking them, and others leading outside of the state. Lillian always thought the world would have considerably less forests if the humans were the only race in existence. Lillian's little town had two main human-owned roads leading outside, one northwise and the other south. The east and west were wooded areas. Lillian headed inland, east of Portland. She didn't know why she didn't head west. She loved the sea after all. But like most happenings tonight, her instincts took over. The boys weren't hurt. They were still in wolf form, but Lillian didn't mind. They could protect themselves better with teeth and claws. She was barely out of the city when, checking her rear view mirror, saw a black SUV rapidly gaining on her. The engine groaned as Lillian pushed the gas pedal to the limit, speeding out of town. The roads were slick with the heavy downpour. The town's lights were already disappearing behind her, but the tail was still there. She could barely see up ahead, where the paved road ended and gravel began. She hoped the men chasing her wouldn't dare get into wolves' territory. No such luck. They kept going, although Lillian pushed her car to its limits. The SUV was faster. Elijah and Ezra whimpered when the car rolled over a huge rock. The gravel beneath the wheels was quickly turning into dirt. She could hardly see anymore, the rain getting more intense, and with most of her attention on expanding the gap between her and her unrelenting tail. Lillian didn't see the cliff drop ahead of her until it was too late. The last thing she remembered after they went airborne was screaming her kids' names. Chapter 2. Noah stifled a growl for what seemed like the 100th time this evening. The meeting dragged longer than any individual in the room cared to entertain. He knew they were discussing a crucial matter, but some people were just repeating what had already been said and decided upon. It was getting tiresome. Putting a dozen dominant wolves in an enclosed space was the most brilliant idea. The round table held more than a dozen alphas. The room was large, but no room was large enough for that many dominant wolves. Remind me why we didn't hold this damn meeting outside, Benjamin asked in an annoyed hushed whisper meant only for Noah and Jensen's ears. The heavy rain outside almost swallowed his words. Jensen replied in the same tone, his voice half a growl. He, too, was shifting restlessly in his seat. I swear Robins loves talking more than humans do, Benjamin whispered when the alpha in question stood up again. So no one else's had similar disappearances. I know you all want to take care of your own problems, but if cases are related, then there's some serious shit going on. Yeah, echoed another young alpha. Achid had just taken over the position a few months earlier, and was overly eager to prove his dominance. He stood up, puffing his chest like a juvenile who'd just gotten his first kill. If anyone is withholding information that could help us resolve the issue, there'll be consequences. A cacophony of harsh growls resonated around the room. Some alphas shot up, reacting to the direct threat. Benjamin chuckled. I knew it was only a matter of time before that idiot put his foot in his mouth. Benjamin, Noah and Jensen also stood. They were far too dominant to consider anyone else in the room a threat, except each other, but having other wolves tower over them while they sat put them at a slight disadvantage. Tu es agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Gentlemen, Jensen said, his voice booming around the room. Jensen was one of the most level-headed wolves Noah knew, with his laughing forest green eyes and reddish-brown hair. He looked like the peacemaker many thought him to be. They were deadly wrong. Noah knew Jensen was lethal, despite his seemingly human bearing. Jensen and Benjamin had known each other since they were pups. I think we've achieved what we came here for. Let's call it a night, Jensen continued, looking around the room, and meeting the young wolf's eyes. The latter dropped his gaze from Jensen's. Frustrated. They were all alphas, but inevitably, some were more dominant than others. That's just how nature works. Between the three friends, it was a close tie. Some days Noah was sure he could take them both down. Other times he doubted that fact. He wasn't interested to test it out. They were close allies. Putting that bond at risk because of a city dominance fight was plain idiotic. The alphas hesitated. No one wanted to get out of the room first and give their back to other wolves. Most weren't stupid, but there were always the greedy ones who did want to take an alpha down in order to get hold of more land. The boast in Noah was too agitated to stay enclosed any longer. He considered such political games beneath him, was to self, assured to worry about other wolves he saw as weaker. Walking out first, he strode through the pack house of the alpha that hosted the meeting and into the night air. The crisp air refreshed his nose and lungs, the rain a cool balm on his hot skin. Noah took off his shorts when he reached the edge of the forest, tucking the borrowed clothes into a tree burrow. He let his wolf take over, aware of Benjamin and Jensen doing the same. Sitting on a chair for more than 2 hours abused his muscles. Noah stretched, giving his fur a good shake. The 3 alphas were neighbors, so they ran in the same direction, stretching their legs in a good fast run. The thick woods blurred around them, expanses of forested land they would never concede to humans, no matter how much the 2-legged prey complained about lack of space and rapidly growing populations. So what do you think? Noah, you've been awfully quiet in the meeting. Benjamin's voice filled Noah's head. His blonde wolf frown on one side of Noah's while Jensen's reddish took the other. Usually, only wolves of the same pack could link each other. But when wolves from different packs foster strong bonds over a long period of time, linking becomes natural for them. When is Noah ever not quiet? Jensen asked with a hint of mischief. Noah snapped playfully at his fall, causing the auburn wolf to falter in his run. He growled playfully at Noah's wolfish grin, an expression that was rarely if ever seen on Noah's human face. I didn't have anything to say, Noah finally answered. Fortunately, our region has been safe, but that doesn't mean it would stay that way. Noah could feel Jensen and Benjamin's solemn agreement. Several disappearances of female wolves had the packs all over the west coast in a frenzy. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilburn, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The packs didn't know it was a serial kidnapping, since alphas rarely discussed internal matters with each other, except if they were really good and old allies. The matter had been left to fester until 7 female wolves from different packs had vanished. Only then did word get out and packs step forward with their issue. All in all, so far, 10 females were unaccounted for. All of them were unmated females, taken when they were on a run alone in the woods with no witnesses around. As soon as news reached Noah, he had issued orders that no pack member. Noah had increased security around his borders. You think it's a good idea to work with the witches? Jensen asked. They crossed into Jensen's territory, in southern Oregon. Benjamin growled deeply. I don't trust them. His opinion of witches was biased at best, but Noah didn't mention that. It was a deep wound for the blonde, cheerful alpha. Most of them aren't so bad, Jensen said instead. And we do need their opinion at the very least. They're better at detecting magic, so they might have some answers as to how 10 wolf disappeared without a trace. Or maybe they heard something that could give us a lead. Benjamin huffed, but conceded to Jensen's usual impeccable logic. Jensen escorted them to the edge of his territory before going back to his pack. They had just crossed into Noseland when an urgent call filled his head. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilburn, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. We have an issue on the western border. What the hell? Benjamin's voice trailed off as they stopped at the foot of a cliff. The slope was too steep. The small blue car was miraculously right side up with no major damage, except for the smashed front bumper and broken windshield. Smoke rose out of what was left of the hood. Noah could hear little growling noises and snapping. 6 of his warriors surrounded something near the car. It smelled like pups and something else. As he closed the distance, even the pouring rain cowled and hid the human scent from Noah's keen noise. Jake, one of Noah's wolves, turned around when the 2 alphas approached, revealing 2 werewolf pups crouched between them and the driver's seat of the car. The pups were mostly unharmed, save for a few scratches. They must have wiggled out of the car's broken windshield. Noah, Benjamin said, these pups don't smell like any pack around here. Noah agreed. If anything, the pups smelled of the human in the car. There's someone in the driver's seat, Jake said as the pups snapped at roll one of his betrayed reaching for them. They had spirit. He would give them that. The pups won't let us check Andrew can't access the other door because it's flat against the cliff. They're protecting whoever it is in there, Benjamin said. Noah knew the exact moment the pups glimpsed him and Benjamin. They froze for a second before shaking their heads and growling louder. Good boys, Noah thought. They knew when there was a bigger predator around. Noah ordered his men to stand back. They were crowding injured animals, and it made them snappish and likely to attack in an attempt to protect themselves. The pups stopped growling when everyone gave them their space, only to pick up again when Noah slowly trotted up to them. He growled louder, shutting them up, though they were still in a defensive crouch. Their tiny golden hackles would have been raised had it not been for the rain. Noah huffed, the wolf more than amused by the pup's spirit to consider their actions disrespectful. Most boys their age would have taken a submissive stance by now. It wouldn't always serve them to be this confrontational, but he figured they could learn that later, when there was a potential life at stake. They might not realize it, but the presence of a more dominant wolf put the pups at ease. They sensed the protective instinct of Noah. Noah shifted to his skin and sat on his haunches. He met the little wolf's amber eyes. We just want to help. There's someone else in the car. Right. We have to get them out to see if they're injured. The wolves gave a confused whimper, digging their claws into the soaked turf. They wanted to protect the woman in the car, but their instincts yelled at them to submit. Can you shift? Noah asked. He kept his voice low but firm. The pups shared a look. Then one of them shifted. His men sucked in a sharp breath behind him. The shift was flawless, way too flawless for a pup in his age group. The boy was around 5 years old. His brown hair matted to his head because of the rain and his eyes a sharp blue. Mommy is in there, the boy said, his voice trembling. She's stuck, and she doesn't want to wake up. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilbay, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Noah nodded, surprised he couldn't smell a female werewolf. We're going to take her out. Will you let us through? He hesitated for a moment before nodding. After the boys moved aside, Noah pulled open the door, conscious of his men flanking him. As expected, there was a human woman in the driver's seat. She was unconscious, her head lolled to the side. A deep gash bled on her temple and scrapes marred on her face. Her black sweater was torn in places, as soaking wet as her blue jeans. Jake tore off the seat belt with his claws since it was stuck, then carried the woman in his arms. Nosewolf cocked his head. The human woman smelled of the wolf pups, like how a mother would smell of her offspring. But that was impossible. Noah checked the car and found it empty. Jake had laid the woman on the ground. The pups crowded beside her, licking her wounds. You said your mom's in there, Benjamin asked. He had shifted back. The boy looked at Benjamin, then glanced at the human female. This is our mom. Noah and Benjamin shared a startled look, because it was impossible for a human female to mother wolf pups. Benjamin left Noah's territory soon afterwards. He was more than happy the car was found on his land. Oh, Chidi told Noah. Anything to do with humans spelled trouble. But Noah didn't have a choice. As much as he didn't want the headache of dealing with this, he had to. He couldn't leave the pups alone, and they seemed very attached to the human woman they called their mother. Noah didn't care what the boys said. He didn't believe she was their biological mother. A human female couldn't mother immortal babies. It was a known fact in their world, which only left one possibility: the human woman had taken the wolf pups, or had found them somewhere. Just lucky the gash is only superficial, but we can't know with humans. They're too fragile. Noah listened to the doctor's words, never taking his eyes off the female lying on the bed. Jake had carried her into the pack infirmary, followed closely by the boys, one wolf and one human. Doctor bent her red head over the human's head. Her hair was wet, darkening the white pillow beneath it, and her skin looked pale and delicate. Was it a good idea to bring her into the pack? Sean asked, Noah's brother and second in command. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Pack magic will protect the land. It didn't matter if the woman was a plot to discover the location of their central pack village. It didn't matter if she had any tracking device on her. It wouldn't work. Magic and technology don't mesh well together. Magic always wins. Right. Sean nodded. 2 on the pups. The two children refused to move away from the woman. Even Ava cowed and get them to at least clean up. They stuck to her side like hot glue. You think she's really their mother? Sean sniffed the air. Now that they're not as drenched, I can clearly tell their smells are well entwined. Even if she's not their mom, they've been living together for a very long time. The boy, who was still in his fur, growled, baring his teeth at Sean. Sean growled back, narrowing his eyes. The pup didn't even lower his gaze. Noah could see fur sprouting on the back of his brother's neck in reaction to the disrespect. Kynle agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. Stop, the other boy hissed, making nervous glances at Sean. His eyes kept changing from amber to blue. His wolf too close to the surface. This one was sharp. Noah could tell. The other kid, Kynle agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. Was more hot-headed. Kynle agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. Settle down. Eva moved around the bed to check the ivy, discreetly breaking the eye contact between boy and man. At that age, the pup should have learned all about pack hierarchy. Fostering a deep sense of structure was important to werewolves. It kept the beast from taking over and allowed the individual to exercise more control over their feral urges. From what Noah saw, the pups didn't know how to act around other pack wolves. And if the human female was indeed the person who brought them up, then it was no wonder they lacked werewolf socializing skills. He still couldn't believe that she was their mother, or that she had been able to raise them up to this point. Noah blew out a breath, already wondering how he would have to deal with the female. There was only one solution to the issue. Wolf packs were very strict when it came to humans infiltrating their territory, and Noah's pack was more sensitive to the issue because of their history. Fortunately, the infirmary was empty. Noah didn't have to deal with any pack member freaking out about the human. Not yet, at least. The infirmary was on the far edge of the pack village. It was a one-story cabin, with 3 rooms, Eva's office, a storage room, and a long room lined with hospital bed. What are you planning to do? Noah, of a mind, linked him. Let's wait for her to wake up first. Then we'll see, Noah replied. Then because Ava was an important pack member whose opinion he valued. What do you think? I decide, giving her palm to Elijah to sniff. I don't know. I mean, it looks really bad. If she was their mother, then how the heck did a human woman find 2 wolf pups? But if she really was their mom, it's impossible. Elijah seemed to like Ava. Not many people didn't. She radiated comfort and affection. The pup licked her palm and let her pet him, scratch behind his ear. Damn pup. Sean growled underneath his breath. Eva looked over her shoulder and winked at her mate. Noah was 8 years older than his 27-year-old brother. But Sean was already mated with the pup on the way. Noah didn't even realize he was attuned to the woman's breathing until it changed. Shess waking up. Eva confirmed. In an instant, Sean was behind his mate, pulling her to steps to his chest. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The boy's eyes finally stayed a bright blue. Noah quietly moved towards the crowded bed. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. A raspy voice. Ava moved, Sean reluctantly letting her go. He was too curious about the human. Wolf didn't usually associate with humans. Some could spend an entire lifespan without interacting with one. The woman's eyes fluttered open. Noah's breath caught in his throat. Under the thin film of confusion was a blue so rich and vivid it seemed as though her irises were 2 perfectly polished gemstones. The woman blinked a couple of times, a frown marring her features. Then shock and panic cleared the confusion. She sat up so fast the pup who was lying on her chest tumbled down to her lap with a whine. Her wild eyes went from the wolf to his brother, her breath coming out in a loud, distressed exhale. Then she shut her eyes tightly, clutching her head. "Oh God. Why don't you lean back?" Ava said, coming back with a glass of water. The human female opened her eyes, startled to realize there were other people around. Her eyes went from Ava to Sean, then settled on Noah. Her wide gaze was an explosion of sapphires and blue skies. She wrapped her arms around Elijah and Desra, gathering them to her. The little wolf flicked her face furiously, his tail wagging. "I'm Ava. And this is Sean and Noah." Ava held out the cup of water. The human looked at it for a long time until Elijah yipped PD. She looked at him, her eyes widening slightly. She gave the pup a nod before accepting the water. "Thank you," she said after downing the whole glass. She looked around the room again. "Where are we?" Ava looked at Noah. The female followed her gaze and settled her. Weird eyes on him. He didn't like it. So he looked at Sean. "You don't know?" Sean asked, narrowing his eyes. "You drove right into our land." Her lips slowly parted. "Right." A pause, then a whisper. "Wolves." Ava sat down on the bed. "What's your name?" "Lillian Miller," she said after a long pause, and another nervous glance at Noah. Noah gritted his teeth as he crossed his arms on his bare chest. He knew what she was staring at. He usually didn't care when people stared, but he found it annoying that this little human who dropped out of the sky did. "What happened?" Lillian swallowed. "What happened to the people who were chasing us?" Ava looked back at Sean and Noah. "They're gone," Noah replied, his voice unintentionally coming out in a growl. Jake had told him that there were some humans lurking around on the top of the cliff, but as soon as they spotted the wolves on patrol, who were in their fur, they scurried back to their vehicle and left. Elijah shifted back to his skin. Noah realized they were identical twins. If not for the slight difference in their sense that very few people would be able to pick up, he wouldn't have managed to tell them apart. "Mommy, they're wolves." "Too," Elijah said in a whisper that everyone in the room could hear. "I can smell it." "I'm sure you can. Baby, they call you Mom." Eva asked, Lillian's arms tight and further on the boys. Then met Eva's gaze head on and replied firmly. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "They're mine." Ava was about to say something, then thought better of it. She looked back at Sean at, "We need to talk to her alone. I don't want to bring us the subject in front of the pups." Sean nodded, then said out loud, "Why don't the pups come with me for a second? I'll take them to get some food. They must be hungry." "No," Lillian said, her eyes lighting with an internal fire. "You're not taking them anywhere. They stay with me." Of us, and held her hands out in a pacifying gesture. "Look, we just want to talk about. I know what you're thinking." Lillian's voice was furious. "But they're mine. They're my kids. I gave birth to them. They're mine." Silence. Noah cowed, wouldn't believe his ears. But it was Sean who said, "It's impossible. You're human." "Where's the father?" Noah asked. Lillian held his gaze. Swallowing heavily, she replied, "Achia's not alive. Our dad was a wolf," Ezra said. His blue eyes focused on Noah. He knew who was in charge. "Mommy is human, but our dad was a wolf." Lillian stiffened considerably, before pressing a kiss to her son's head. "They know." "Honey, you're not serious?" Sean asked incredulously. "You're human. You can't carry mortal pups." Lillian's affectionate expression turned sour when it shifted to Sean. "Well, I did. And I don't care if you believe me or not." They stared at each other until Scene's gaze turned into the amber of his wolf. Eva tried putting her hand on his arm, but it didn't take his attention off the human. Noah had met humans before, and HED never met anyone who could meet a wolf's gaze and hold it like Lillian was doing. Humans subconsciously realize they are in the presence of a bigger predator. They want to submit. The need is so primal most humans don't realize they are doing it. Sean growled. Lily Ann's glare sharpened. Don't growl at me. Sean. No's tone indicated HED had enough. After the long meeting HED had, he wanted to call it a night. Sean strode out of the room. Ava hesitated before rushing behind him to calm him down. Lillian's gaze then shifted to Noah. He held it, raising a brow when she just looked at him. Her eyes lingered on the right side of his face. Should we leave? Noah shook his head, then looked at the pups who clung to their mother. The physical similarities couldn't be denied, but that didn't mean she was their mother. Though Noah could admit one thing. It didn't matter if she really didn't give birth to them. It seemed she was their mom in all other ways that mattered. You'll stay here for the night. He nodded towards the attached bathroom. There's a shower in there. You may use it. They'll send in some clothes and food. Tonight you rest. We'll talk tomorrow. The door will be locked, so don't try to leave. Her lips tightened. Are we prisoners? Noah admired the woman's spirit, but he wouldn't lie to her. The more she was afraid of them, the better. They couldn't afford to let humans think that the werewolves were harmless puppies. They were deadly beasts and they should be recognized as such. For the immortal sake, as well as for the humans. He let his wolf closer, his eyes turning bright amber. Your pups are wolves. They're safe here. But you're a human, and humans aren't welcome in my territory. Remember that. He left, ordering guards posted outside the infirmary. He would contact Harvey as soon as he got home. The suave vampire knew people who could get their hands on all sorts of information, including information about a certain Lillian Miller, mother of 2 boys. As Noah headed to the Pack village, he realized that not once did he smell the stench of fear on the human woman.